Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is Time Flies. This is our final webinar series for the first part of the year. We'll be back in September or October to continue our discussion on Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. But tonight, I'd like to just thank you all for being here and for being a part of this webinar series. We're really grateful for your participation and your support. And we're going to have a small change or modification in our format. We've received some feedback last month, and we want to be respectful and responsive to that feedback. So we're going to shorten the front part of this webinar so that we have more time for our guest and for the interview and the discussion. So I'm Dina Darlington. I'm the founder of Links to Equity. I'm so grateful that you all are here. Links to Equity is a boutique health policy consulting firm. We partner with patient advocacy organizations, with biopharmaceutical industry partners to engage on Alzheimer's disease, but also more broadly across a number of diseases. We believe it's important for awareness and education, and oftentimes at a community level, we don't always have that. So our real goal here is to provide education awareness at a community level, but also we support our partners on health policy education and awareness, and disease education and awareness. I am honored to work with two colleagues on this project. Catherine Boxell, she's our Director of Strategic Operations, and Joseph Coe, he's our program consultant. And many thanks to them for the good work they've done throughout this year in supporting this Alzheimer's webinar series. The reason why we're here is because Alzheimer's is a disease that has a significant impact in Black and Brown communities. By the year 2030, 40% of Americans living with the disease will be Black or Brown. Oftentimes, we're not aware of that, and community is not aware of that. So we really wanted to do something about it. Which is the impetus for this webinar series. We really wanted to have a dialogue around it so that we could disband some of the stigma associated with Alzheimer's, but also be a resource for community that is battling with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. We believe it's important to share our lived experience with the disease, to foster trust with our key stakeholders, to exchange information, and to just really have an ongoing dialogue and conversation so that we can be much more comfortable having this dialogue. A big key reason that we're having this dialogue is because of our Community Advisory Board team. They have just been amazing partners for the past 2 years, and they've really allowed us to dig deeper into the community, have a better understanding of community, and just spread the word about the work that we're doing here on these webinar series. So recognizing this is our last series for the first part of the year, I just want to extend a huge thank you to all of our Community Advisory Board workers and share with you all a bit of how they engage and how they support us. As I mentioned, oftentimes they are representative of social groups, faith-based communities, national organizations, and they really are our boots on the ground. They are out to churches, to barbershops, to congregations, community health fairs. They're just our boots on the ground and with our community. So we're so grateful for the work that they do when they're out with community, educating them about this, and always having this issue, this project front of mind. They do this and by being actually out there in person, but also through social media, emails, digital flyers, text messaging, and really bringing back to us what's the best way for us to engage with community. So they work two ways. They work externally with our community, but they come back and they give us great insight and guidance how we can be better partners with community. So I'll jump into our agenda for this evening. Obviously, we just went through our welcome and our introduction. We are very fortunate to have Robert Reid here with us this evening. He's a facilitator of Black Dementia Minds, and he's a caregiver. He's going to share his journey with us as being a caregiver. So for his wife, Kim Reid. So we are just so honored and blessed to have him with us this evening. After Robert and I have a discussion and an interview, we'll then go into a Q&A session where we'll talk a bit about, we'll give you all an opportunity to ask questions. And some of you asked a number of questions before the webinar. So Catherine's going to ask Robert the questions that you all put forth prior to the actual webinar this evening. And then we'll go into your questions that come up for you during this actual discussion. So that you all have time. A big reason why we're minimizing our time up front is so we can have this discussion and you all can get your voice heard and your questions answered. Please remember, we have a survey. Your survey helps us. That's a big reason why we changed the format of this, because of your great insight and feedback. So we greatly appreciate it. As we ramp up for our next series that will start in October of 2020, of this year, actually, of 2025. We'll be starting back up September, October. We really want your feedback because you guide how we really run this webinar. So please keep the good insights coming our way, and then I'll provide closing remarks. Here's the QR code. If you'd like to go ahead and scan that now before we actually get into the conversation, that way you're going to save time and you can begin to fill out your survey, or you'll have it up and ready to go once we complete the session. So I'm going to read to you all a bit about Robert. I can tell you from my work with him over the past month, he's just an amazing individual, and I think that we're in for a real treat this evening by having him and Kim as speakers. Faith is foundational to Robert Reid's family values. He's a longtime resident of Hampton, Georgia. Robert was ordained as a deacon in 2003 and has served in various leadership roles within his church communities. He currently serves as a deacon at Restoration Christian Fellowship Church in College Park, Georgia. He retired from after having retired from a nearly 40-year career in transportation. Robert now cares for his wife, Kimberly, full-time. In 2017, Kimberly received a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's. Upon Kim's diagnosis, the family made it a personal mission to advocate for persons living fully with dementia and for caregivers, care partners. Robert is a support group facilitator for Black Dementia Minds, and Robert will share a bit more with us about Black Dementia Minds. It's a culturally grounded, faith-based group under the National Council of Dementia Minds. He previously served on the Ultra Dementia Advisory Board and has contributed to caregiver resources, research, and awareness efforts nationwide. Robert contributed to the Dementia Action Alliance Pathways to Wellbeing with the 2022 publication of the Dementia Manual of Health, Hope, and Inspiration, and has faithfully captained a Walk to End Alzheimer's team since 2017, earning recognition as a top 5 fundraiser for the past 5 years. Most recently, Robert and Kimberly took part in a PBS documentary entitled Dementia and Living Well as one of the featured families. They are proud parents of 2 adult children, Brandis, a 2023 Teacher of the Year, and Robert, a sports videographer. So please join me in welcoming Robert. I'm so excited to have him with us this evening, and I'm going to stop sharing so that we can have a better view of Robert and we can begin our discussion. Thanks again, Robert, for being with us. I'm so excited to have you here with us and for you to share your story. It's such a compelling and interesting story. So thank you for that. The first question is, I'd like to go back to 2017 with you when Kimberly was first diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. What was the experience like for you and your family?
Well, as you can imagine, it was devastating. just obtaining the diagnosis in the very beginning. Literally, Kim had been having some issues at work, and she literally went to her primary care physician several different times. And from those appointments, they literally just told her that she was having some premenopausal issues. Um, at the time, Kim was 50 years old. So, with that said, through a lot of appointments, and finally, me taking the initiative to go with her to one of her appointments, not to intimidate, but to ask questions of the primary care physician, they actually came back with the same diagnosis of uh,
Premenopausal?
yes, ma'am, being pre-menopausal, but at the same time, they did have an open ear once I pulled them aside to ask if they could do some additional testings. So, of course, they did those preliminary testings. And from those preliminary testings, they decided to refer us to a neurologist. Unfortunately, during that time, my insurance was changing. So we actually changed insurances, which was an inconvenience, but at the same time, it was a blessing because we were able to join an HMO, which had everything under one umbrella. From that, we were able to get a wonderful neurologist that paid a lot of personal attention to us. And through a lot of testing, they were able to give us an official diagnosis. So on June 15th at 7 o'clock in the evening, we sat around the kitchen table waiting for the phone call to let us know how all of her final testing added up to see what the official diagnosis would be. So upon getting that phone call, uh, it's not that we didn't already know, because the Lord had already shared with us that we could expect that diagnosis. But of course, until you actually hear it for yourself, um, it makes a big difference. So, with that said, yes, we didn't know anything about Alzheimer's, which unfortunately a lot of people don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's only until you get familiar with it that you start thinking back to a lot of things. And that's what we did. We had to reflect back on family situations, which actually pushed us to kind of where we are today.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you, Robert, what was it? Because there's a lot of we get a lot of questions every month when we have this webinar. And I'm curious as you, and thank you first, thank you for sharing that journey with us.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you share with us a little bit about what that test was that kind of help people that's on the webinar with a better understanding? Because we often hear many of our speakers in the beginning of this process, they just don't have a lot of information.
Yes, ma'am. And that is unfortunate. Um, and if I could add some additional insight as well, a
Sure.
lot of it really has to do with the type of services you have, because we initially went to a general practitioner, and that's where we got the initial testing. And those testings were those simple tests where they ask you to draw a clock, they ask you to hold out your hand and to see if how your balance works out. It was just some initial test that they used to refer us to a neurologist. Upon that referral to a neurologist, they did the same testing, but they took some additional steps in doing that, which actually led us to a neuropsychologist. And that neuropsychologist did a lot of additional testing, which actually provided the actual initial diagnosis thought of early onset Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
So once we got that preliminary diagnosis, it allowed us to take that information to our new neurologist, because keep in mind, I had to change insurance, so I had to go to a new neurologist. But that neurologist was kind enough to do all of the different types of scans, the MRIs, the PET scans, and she also had a spinal tap. And with that spinal tap, they were able to check her tau counts and to use all of that information to come up with a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's, which was basically based on her age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And someone did actually ask that question. We were kind of together. And so I'm just going to repeat that I heard you that she had an MRI,
Yes,
she
ma'am.
had a PET scan, and a spinal tap.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've spoken about how faith was foundational in helping you navigate this journey. And every time I have a call with you, you always put your faith, out there and let us know what that means and how that's helped you with this journey. How did your spiritual beliefs help guide you through the uncertainty and grief that can sometime accompany a diagnosis like this? And keep in mind, you told us that you kind of already knew
Yes, ma'am.
advance. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think your faith was a part of that as well.
Oh, definitely. You know, having faith, Christian faith, um, our Lord Jesus Christ, and the Word allows us the opportunity to have insight because He knows the end from the beginning. With that said, um, we have always been a praying family. Um, and those prayers and those insights prepared us for something that we were not expecting. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell a story that it didn't still affect us because we still live in this flesh. But I will say that the impact was buffeted
Mm,
due to that faith because it automatically helped us to start looking forward instead of staying in one spot.
hmm.
So, with that said, that's one thing that we decided to do. And excuse my voice, I get emotional. In fact,
That's so no, 100%. I do too. So
they
you're in
they
good
joke
you're in good company.
they joke with me all the time. They call me the weeping deacon. But with that said, um, it uh, that's what we have to depend on. Because I will be honest with you, family and friends may not always be there
Hmm.
when you need them,
Hmm.
even though they say they will. Oh, whatever you need, we'll be there.
Hmm.
They're not always there when you actually need them. So who is there? Christ is there.
Hmm.
And with that, just through our thoughts and prayers and our belief, it actually helped us to want to advocate for this. That's one of the first things Kim said. And excuse me for not introducing my lovely wife, Kim. I will say that Kim is in the latter stages of Alzheimer's, and she doesn't do a lot of talking or a lot of movement. But I will say this: every now and then you'll see her smile. Kim, can you give him a smile? In fact, Kim is known for her smiling, so just kind of look out for her smile. But one of the first things that she wanted to do was to advocate specifically for our children,
Mm,
first and foremost. Because, like I said, we didn't know a lot about Alzheimer's because the doctors really didn't share a lot. They literally, and you've heard this story time and time again, they literally tell you you got so many years to live, get your affairs in order, and just be ready because it's considered a terminal illness. Well, I can tell you that that's not all that's to it. do believe that God has a purpose and a plan for everything that he does. And he has actually used this advocacy as a form of allowing us to remain close to him, but also to help bring others closer to him.
That you answered the next question I was going to ask you, Robert.
I'm sorry.
No, I think it's great because it came full circle. I was going to ask you, what inspired you and Kimberly to turn your personal journey into a public mission of advocacy and support, and you answered it beautifully. So thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
And we appreciate what you do, which is it's why I'd like to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with Black Dementia Minds. And if you could tell us a little bit about the organization and sort of how did that come about?
Well, first of all, Black Dementia Minds is our second family because it's really considered a family. Black Dementia Minds falls up under the National Council of Dementia Minds, which is based out of Michigan, but it's the first 501c organization that is administered literally by those living with dementia. So all of the board members, all of the leaders within the organization have that direct connection of mild cognitive impairment or dementia. Black Dementia Minds is a subset that came into play in 2021. There was a group of 3 individuals that was actually tapped to present with Teepa Snow under Black Dementia Minds, under the name Black Dementia Minds. With that said, it was said by one of the members, "Hey, all of these conferences and stuff that we go to, we don't see many faces that look like ours. We need to do something about that." So Brenda Roberts, the executive director of National Council of Dementia Minds, said, "Hey, let's do something about that." So they started a subgroup called Black Dementia Minds. And we are a Christian faith-based group of about 9 individuals that live very well with dementia, but with the main purpose of supporting each other, but more specifically advocating to the Black community. And we purposely advocate to the Black community because of the disparities that we find within the Black community of understanding dementia, but as well as we all know, understanding that we have always not had the same opportunities for healthcare and education when it actually comes to dementia or mild cognitive impairment. So Black Dementia Minds, again, is a family that loves to advocate. And with that said, the group literally will speak to any organization. So I have to put a plug out there. If you would love to actually hear from those living well with dementia, please contact us and we will definitely come and talk to your organization so that you can get the real insight of what's going on with those that are living well with dementia.
Thank you for that, Robert. I appreciate it. One thing that I'm often questioned about is when I say that by the year 2030, 40%
Mm.
of folks diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease will be Black and brown, and that Black folks are 2.5 or 2 times more likely to have the disease, and Latinos are 1.5 likely. And sometimes even people of color, Black people, don't believe that.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's great that we have an organization like Black Dementia Minds, because I think that one of the reasons why is we don't see us. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when folks are talking about dementia and it's being highlighted, we don't see Black and brown faces.
Mm-hmm.
But we kind of think that we're not impacted by it. And that's a myth. And that's another reason why we have these webinars, because we are and we want to live well the way that you're speaking about.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me a little bit about how, a lot of, I have one of our community leaders, Reverend Thurman. He's always saying, we need resources, and he's 100% correct. And we plan to move forward with what Pastor Thurman has advocated for these past 2 years as we go into our third iteration of this project. What I'm curious about from your perspective is, are there more Black dementia minds out there that we can tap into as a resource? What does that look like if, that question comes up a lot, the resource piece. And, we all know that when you are a part of a support group or a patient advocacy group, you live better with your disease. And it's sort of like what you've been saying, living
Mm-hmm.
well, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a family. You can rely on one another. You can talk to one another about it. So help me understand how are there other Black dementia minds out there, and if so, can we tap into them?
Yes, ma'am. Unfortunately, um, we as an organization, we only have our individual Black Dementia Mind group, which is made up of 8 to 9 individuals, but we do have a long waiting list for people who would like to join a Black Dementia Minds type group. But in order to do that, you have to have people that are willing to volunteer to facilitate. So this would be a clarion call for anyone who would like to help facilitate additional Black Dementia Minds group. Because anytime we present, we always have people that are interested in wanting to join. Because, like you just mentioned, support goes a long way. Anytime that you have the opportunity to be around like-minded individuals, it gives you the comfort to be yourself, because they can literally understand what you're going through. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, I say that because that's where we stand. Yes, there are other Black dementia support groups out there, but we don't have a conglomerate of Black Dementia Minds groups altogether. Um, if I could touch on something that you spoke
Yeah,
about earlier,
sure.
you spoke about those numbers, which are really rose into the need for support groups. That Blacks are 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with dementia, Hispanics 1.5 times. Keep in mind where those numbers come from. Those numbers literally come from the statistics that they have. If you really look at the true statistics that are probably out there, it's probably a whole lot higher than that.
You're right.
So, with that said, the need of us having more education and understanding goes so much further, because if you don't have an understanding of something, how can you just do something about it?
Robert, next year, or not next year, I keep saying next year, but in September, October, when we start our third iteration of this, I'm going to, and we're going to create a resource center so that folks can have resources within their state that they can actually identify how to get support. And I'd also like to highlight, your organization, Black Dementia Minds, and put that call out there if you'd like to lead one of these, because that seems like a
Right?
huge gap.
Yes, ma'am.
And I get people, are busy. They don't have time, and you are special. You really are a special individual, and that have devoted your time, your heart, your compassion, not only to caring for your beautiful wife, Kimberly, but also to others living with this disease. So, it's not, we don't have a line of robbers, but I think that it would certainly be an amazing resource that we can begin to fill and even talk about. I think that there's the opportunity to talk about a train the trainer. How do you be a Robert? How do you do
Just
a Black Dementia Minds? So I think there's a lot of opportunities that I'd like for us to peel back when we in September, October. And I'm proud to announce that Robert's going to be a part of our community advisory board. We're so happy to have his thinking, his compassion, and his knowledge as we go into the next iteration of this project. One more question because I received feedback that I go on too long, that we have to have time for Q&A. So one last question. So what is one message or prayer you would want to share with families walking through this journey today?
well, if I could, in particular, speak to the care partners. And first of all, notice I use the term care partner. There's caretaker, there's a caregiver, and there's a care partner. When Kim was diagnosed, we were both diagnosed because two became one. So whatever she goes through, I go through as well. And because I'm here 24/7 with her, I'm actually partnering with her in this. So don't ever be offended if I correct someone when they call me a caregiver, because yes, I do give care, but actually I partner in it. So I just always have to put that out there because I would like to see the definitions changed just a little bit, especially for those who actually um, care more than just giving care, but they can actually have lived experience on a day-to-day basis. With that said, yes, there are a couple of scriptures that I would like to give to care partners. One, of course, is that God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self discipline. And the reason I choose that scripture is because care giving, care partnering can be scary because you're literally changing your life to adapt for someone else's life. And that can be scary because of this flesh that we live in, because we think about ourselves more often than we think about others. But that also leads me to my favorite scripture, which is out of Second Corinthians. It literally says, God comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others when
Mm.
they are troubled. We will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. So I say that to say that actually God has already set us up to be there for those that need help, because all of us have gone through something.
Mhm.
And since we've gone through it, it allows us the opportunity to help someone else. So if I had to share two things, I would share those two scriptures with the caregivers. For those who are going through, I also share that scripture about fear. Um, there's one term that we use in our group all the time. It's called adapting. God has given us the ability to adapt. And for those living well with dementia, they really don't look at it as a deterrent. Yes, some do, because anytime you're afflicted with something, yes, it's only natural for you to feel that way. But if you have a faith background, even Paul had a thorn in his side. Now, what that was, nobody knows. But God told him, "Hey, I am not going to take that away from you." But what did it allow him to do? It allowed him to get even closer to God. So thank you for asking that question and allowing me to express my faith-based views on how someone can live as a care partner as well as one that may be affected.
Thank you so much, Robert. We really, really appreciate you sharing your journey with us this evening, and giving us some words of encouragement and guidance. Your insights have just been, I mean, we've gotten so much feedback just on this call. I'm going to pause, and and Catherine is going to, she's a team member. Folks wrote questions before the actual webinar. I want to those people to have their questions asked. So we'll have Catherine ask those, but I am going to sneak in one from Tawanya Jones. And she asked, and I don't know, we could potentially get Tawanya's email and do some research behind the scenes, but she wants to know, what does facilitating a Black Dementia Minds group entail? So you may have made some recruitments this evening.
Yes, ma'am. That would be wonderful. First of all, um, you don't have to have any professional type of experience. Um, the National Council of Dementia Minds, of course, being an organization, they do have some protocols and some training that you have to go through, and a background check, of course, because when you're dealing with individuals' personal issues, personal information, you have to be trustworthy. But really, to be honest with you, the best facilitators are those who want to do it, not those who are assigned to do it.
Mm.
So if you have empathy, which is a strong word, then you will probably make a pretty good facilitator. Because I'll be honest with you, our family, our group, they really don't need me as the facilitator. They really don't. But at the same time, just like anything else, you have to have a framework because literally our meeting was set up for an hour, but we usually go about 2 hours. And just think, if I wasn't there to shut it off, we would probably still be on the meeting today because of the camaraderie that they have with each other. But that's a great question. And if you need more information on that, feel free to contact me directly. And I'm sure they will provide my information as well as the National Council of Dementia Minds.
And Tawanya, just send either in your survey or in your chat, give us your email address and we'll connect you to so you can talk to Robert. Okay, Catherine, we have some really good questions here and comments that I'd love to be able to share. So I'm going to open the floor to you, and then I'll come back to this evening's Q&A.
Yes, good evening, everyone. We've got some really good questions, submitted ones and ones that just came in from the Q&A. I'm going to try to combine them in some ways because some of them are kind of duplicates. But Robert, what you mentioned about being a care partner, which resonates very much. Even when I was putting out social media, I was intentional about saying care partner. And so with that question, there have been questions that people have been wondering about how you care for yourself. You know, what do you do for yourself? And, you know, one thing you mentioned a little while ago was that when Kim was diagnosed, you were also diagnosed. So, a couple of these questions that came in was, someone really asked, how are you feeling today? Do you schedule time for yourself to rest and relax as a caregiver? What is your typical day like? And then also there was a keeping it 100. What's been the biggest frustration, challenging thing you've encountered during this season? So can you share about your care partner experience?
Well, I see it's 6:41 and you don't have time for all of the things that I could say to that. But no, I thank you for the question. Honestly, let me start off with this. Each person is different. Each person's background is different. Each person's empathy is different. So, with that said, personally for me, I am kind of a control freak. So I literally want to do everything for Kim, which is not actually good for her because I need to allow her to do what she needs to do. But in doing that, I don't really give much time for myself. Now, my children are two wonderful children, two wonderful young adults, and they are willing to help in any way possible. But I want them to live their lives. So I take on a lot more than I probably should, because I know people are going to say, well, you need time for yourself. Yes, I'll find time for myself. Cutting the grass, I have time for myself. I don't sleep a lot, so I have time for myself. But as far as I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for others. But because we are made differently, you have to find, as a care partner, what things you need, what things, well, let me just put it this way, what things you required prior to your new job. You need to kind of find a way to carry those same things over and find time to do it. But I will tell you that God always makes a way. God knows how you feeling. Somebody asked how we're feeling today. Hey, if she wakes up, I'm blessed. It's a good day.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So you previously spoke about the different type of tests, the PET scan, the MRI, the spinal tap, which was very helpful because we've had questions such as that. We also had a question because you were talking about the neuropsychologist, and someone was wondering, should they request a neuropsychologist if they suspect their loved one is affected?
Again, it really depends on a lot of different factors. It depends on where you live. It depends on what resources are available to you. Um, um, but I would suggest that no matter what type of resources that you have available, don't just accept what you're provided. Ask questions, do your research, and find out what is available for you and what things you can do. Personally, yes, I would suggest, if you have the availability, to utilize a neuropsychologist, because really that's their specialty. When you talk about a general practitioner, we love them, but think about that. They're just a general practitioner. Utilize all of the specialists. In fact, because a lot of doctors, and no disrespect to any professionals that may be on this call, but a lot of doctors don't necessarily have the expertise to diagnose anything other than their own specialty. Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid to ask for a second opinion. I will say this, and I am a little biased, that some insurances will try to minimize the amount of care that you can have, but you, as a paying patient, can continue to ask for things that they may not recommend.
Awesome, thank you. We had another question here in terms of what are some of the strategies to get your loved one to relinquish management of their finances to prevent fraud, mistakes, overspending, etc. And then to kind of piggyback on that, what would be the top 3 support items you would suggest a family consider?
With always keep in mind my way of thinking. My way of thinking is that I don't necessarily think in the box. I think out of the box. With that said, I think about how each individual and their circumstances are different. So because of that, it really depends on the individual. But I can use our situation as an example. because I was the one who has always taken care of the finances. That was not something that I had to pry away from Kim. Now, there were some things that, yes, it was hard for her to adapt to not doing anymore. Kim used to love to bake cakes, but she found out that was difficult for her to do. So, of course, I had to use my wit to help her recognize that maybe that's something that she can't do anymore. Same with driving. There's just certain things. It really, that's a hard question because it really depends on the individual. But I will say overall that no one wants their independence taken away from them. So as a care partner, it's really my job to encourage the individual to continue doing what they are, but maybe make some modifications with the hope that at some point they might recognize, okay, I don't need to be doing this anymore. But there's no true way of doing it for everybody because unfortunately, that's the biggest issue I have with Alzheimer's overall because there are so many different types of dementias and each dementia has different symptoms and side effects that it's hard to put everything in a box. It really depends on the individual. And that's where my advantage as a care partner comes in because I'm with Kim 24/7. A caregiver or a caretaker may only come in once a week. So all they see is what's happening during that couple of hours or 6 hours that they come in. And they really can't assist as well. Now, you did ask a second part to that question about three
What would be the
items.
top 3 support items you would suggest a family to consider?
Well, that's a great question because, of course, we always have to deal with the finances. I would recommend, in particular, when it comes to the finances, that before, if you even feel like you have any type of memory issues, before you start trying to get an official diagnosis, make sure that you have some long-term health care insurance as well as life insurance established. Because once they find out that you are in the process or have gotten a diagnosis, you cannot be considered for those types of insurance. Second, continue to just be empathetic to the individual. One thing that Kim used to always say was that I'm still me. And we try to take that away from them, especially when we're thinking about all the things that we have to do. And then we've also got to try to do for them. No, let her be her or let them be them. And the third thing is pray. Because you need all the help that you can get. Pray.
Absolutely.
But I will say this overall, everything that we're talking about today is really about relationship. It's really about relationship. The better the relationship, the better everything else works itself out.
Absolutely. Thank you. You were speaking a little while ago about dementia. And so we always get these types of questions, but particular to Kim, someone asked, what were some of Kim's early onset symptoms? And what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? What is the progression rate?
Yes, ma'am. For Kim, well, all of us, when we get a little older, things are not as easy to keep up with because you may go downstairs and forget what you went downstairs for. For me, I need a lot of sticky notes to remind me to what to do when I was still working. Kim was having those type of issues, but at the same time, it was happening more frequently. Kim was a freight manager for a logistics company. And when you're in logistics, you've got to keep up with hundreds of shipments across the country. So with that said, just personally for me, knowing that I had to have sticky notes for the things that I needed to do on that day, try to keep up with hundreds of shipments each day. So she found out that she was literally having issues with trying to track a lot of those shipments, which really didn't notice much going on at home when she was at home. And part of that was probably because she was in her comfort zone. But she did notice those things at work. And the second part of your question was, and I'm sorry, I didn't write it down.
No. What is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia?
Well, first of all, I'm not a professional.
Mm-hmm.
So I always have to put that disclaimer out there. But Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term because there are literally hundreds of types of dementia. Now, Alzheimer's is one of the more diagnosed forms of dementia. But as I mentioned earlier, there are so many different side effects, so many different ways that people are affected, that a lot of times a person may be diagnosed with one type of dementia, but they may be re-diagnosed as their symptoms progress to a different type of dementia. So that's why dementia is really a umbrella where there are different types of dementias, with the most prevalent ones being, of course, Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, which for us as African Americans, dealing with high blood pressure, dealing with those things that affect our vascular system, we are have a very high likelihood of that happening, which also causes strokes. There are just so many different things, again, with dementia being still new to a lot of people. It's hard to get a true diagnosis, but just having that understanding that dementia is the umbrella, which is the cognitive issues that you have.
Thank you. You answered that very well within your scope.
Within my scope, yes, ma'am.
You can also go.
So we're going to be winding down soon, but we have time for like maybe one or two more questions. Are there any particular therapies that Kim is receiving at this time?
Indirectly, yes. Kim is having some issues with her mobility. In fact, I don't know if you noticed, if you've been looking, she really doesn't move that much. So part of my job on a daily basis is to make sure that she gets up every couple of hours. We have a 2-story home, so I still try to get her to go up and down the stairs. It may take us 30 minutes. I may have to lift her feet up to do it, but the goal is to stay mobile, to keep her mind as active as possible. And I know you hear this all time and time again, but just to help reflect on those memories. The biggest issue is the short-term memory. So there's still a lot of long-term memories that are out there, which literally relate to music. You can play certain songs. Kim loved gospel music. So you can just see how she perks up whenever music is played. Again, it really depends on the individual, but that does play a big part. Even as a caretaker or caregiver versus a care partner, find out what they used to love to do. Find out their background, their history, because as Kim would say, I'm still me.
Amen. Thank you. And let's just have one more last question here for this time. Where should you turn for guidance through the process of securing round-the-clock care?
That's a great question. A lot of it does have to do with your locale. Each state is different when it comes to Medicaid. One, if you are even eligible for Medicaid, a lot of localities have different different fundings, different things, which unfortunately all the fundings are being affected right now. So really, I wish I had a better answer for that, but the best answer I can give you is for you to do your own homework. And the best way to do that is to find out what is going on locally, funding wise, as well as the offerings that they have. Now, if you are financially able, which is very expensive, then you can look into there's all types of facilities that will give you the care that you need, but it will be at a cost, which I don't even want to talk about the cost of any type of facilities or out-of-pocket costs for having that care. See, I plan to do it all myself. And that's just me personally. But a lot of people, of course, can't do that. So that's a great question. But my response would be to check your local entities to find out what best fits your financial situation, as well as the current fundings, which again are limited. And we could probably talk about that for a long time. But anyway.
Absolutely. Thank you. Before I turn it over to Dean, I just want to read a couple of comments here. Daphne Cox said, "We're here for you because you're always been strong."
Thank you, cousin.
Someone said, "Deacon Reid, the panel and everyone on this call today are here for you and your family. God has led us all here today for a reason and purpose. This is amazing." And then one other comment was, "Just words of thanks and gratitude to Robert and Kim for sharing your journey and offering yourself as a resource to others through Black Dementia Minds. May God continue to bless."
Bless them as well.
Well, thank you, Catherine, for rounding out with those questions. That was very helpful. And Robert and Kim, thank you so much again for sharing your story. It was a very engaging discussion. I think that you got a lot of folks thinking about some of the issues that arise on this journey. And just thank you so much for allowing yourself to be vulnerable with us and have this dialogue. I have my dad passed and he had dementia with Lewy body, so I can certainly appreciate your journey and as well as appreciate those tender moments that we all have when we're caring for someone that we love with this disease. So thank you again for agreeing to be with us this evening, and thank you for agreeing to be on our community advisory board as we start off our next edition in September, October of 2025. I'm going to allow Pastor Thurman to make a comment. He had his hand raised, and so we're going to run a little late. But please, if you can hang in there with us, please do. If not, we totally want to respect your time and understand if you may need to jump off. Pastor Thurman?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
This past week, I was viewing a documentary that said that there's been a recent development in the Genome Project where they have identified a certain gene within the gene structure that can pre-diagnose the possibility of Alzheimer's. And there's a certain marker within that structure that they have the possibility of altering to prevent Alzheimer's. I'm just wondering, has anyone been privy to that information? And if so, are we as Black and brown people a part of that research? This is something that just has developed within the past 30 days it's been put out, that there are certain markers within the gene that can predetermine with 70% accuracy whether or not a person will develop Alzheimer. Now, it didn't list any of the other dementias, but it did list Alzheimer's. And I've been trying to uh, find that information and where that research is going on so that we can be at ground level. I'm just wondering if anybody else is aware of that.
If so, please go ahead and put it in the chat. And what we can do, Pastor Thurman, is go back to one of our speakers that we had earlier on the earlier this year, Michelle, on the clinical side. Obviously, this is new information, so we'll see if she can share any insight. She's running a Alzheimer's clinical trial for Black women. So we can certainly reach out to her to see if she has any clinical insights. And we know that when you think about diversity in clinical trials, that's been a long-standing challenge within diverse communities, period. There's oftentimes a lack of trust around clinical trials, but also there's also a lack of healthcare professionals asking Black and brown folks to be in clinical trials as well. So I think that, there's two sides to that coin. And what we want to do as part of our webinar series and our education and awareness is try to minimize some of those barriers that prevent Black and brown communities from participating in clinical trials, remove some of that stigma, and encourage Black and brown communities to participate so that we can begin to understand whether or not these medicines work for us, what is the impact, as well as having access to the standard of care. Because quite honestly, if it's if it's a clinical trial, you're getting the standard of care at that time. So that's part of our goal here too, is to really educate our communities, but certainly respect the distrust that they have around it, because that's their lived experience and that's our history. So we can't change that, but we can begin to educate and make aware of opportunities for engagement around clinical trials and try to remove some of those barriers. So thank you for that. I appreciate the question. And I'm going to share a little bit about what's ahead, what lies ahead for this group. We want to continue to expand, and we're doing that with our community advisory board. We have really been able to engage some really great individuals that have a strong focus on community, a strong level of engagement and commitment. So we're excited that we're expanding. It gives us greater reach. It gives us greater access to newer communities. So we're really, really happy about that. And we're also working to do something that Pastor Thurman has really talked about a lot in this, and over the past 2 years that we've been working together. And one thing that he's been very, very adamant about is us creating a resource center, so that we can begin to identify those resources. We want to be really thoughtful about what that looks like, and pull some of those state resources together, recognizing that they will change over time. So we really want to put the real core resources. Like when someone asks that question about, where should they research, or where should they look to for additional care? Your Department of Aging, again, it depends on your state, how much funding you have. I think Robert may have said, think about the cuts that's going on right now. So, that all plays into it. But your local Department of Aging is an amazing resource. I live in Washington, D.C. We have a great, our Department of Aging really supports folks living with Alzheimer's and dementia, related dementias, but they also provide support to those individuals. Again, every state probably does not have that level of service. Local Alzheimer's communities, they too will provide support and sometimes have funding to support at a caregiving level. And then there's some national organizations that also provide support in that regard. So we want to be able to share those resources more broadly, share and potentially even build out resources like, more support groups like Black Dementia Minds that will allow, others to have the support that Robert provides, and the empathy and that family that he has within the group that he leads. So again, that's another great resource. We also want to, in addition to that digital community resource center that we're building out, we're also going to build out a social media effort that will allow us to engage the younger caregivers. We talked about that last month, where we were able to have Melanin Minded, and they had, one of our speakers shared his journey as a young person and what that looked like for him. So we want to be able to engage across, this disease impacts all of us at some point. And it doesn't really matter about your age. It can be a very young caregivers. There's reports out right now that speaks to the number of young caregivers in the United States. So we want to be able to capture those caregivers, that age group beyond, 18 to 30, and then 30 to 50, and then 50 to 80. We want to be able to engage those folks. And we know that faith-based is an amazing approach then, and we really supported that faith-based approach. And we also want to go beyond our faith-based, totally, maintain our community engagement and our faith-based engagement, but also think about different populations that we want to target. So we're also going to have a hip hop engagement where we look at different forms of art to engage Black and Brown communities. So we can begin to see their faces, and we can begin to see the art that resonates with them and that describes their journey and their experience. So we're really excited as we begin this new journey in September and October of this year. And here's again is our QR code to pull up our Survey Monkey to provide us with your feedback. We really do listen to you. We listen to your feedback. We modify our webinar based upon the information you share with us. So we're all ears. We really want to make this about you, but also what makes sense when you're learning about this. What do you want to hear about? So please share your thoughts with us, but also if you feel that there's any gaps, we want to hear about those as well. And then also we'd love for you to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you scan these QR codes, you have access to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. But before we end, I would also like to give a huge thank you to our community advisory members. We have 3 on the call this evening. Pastor Joseph Owens, we have Jacqueline Lee, and we have Pastor Thurman. And they really give a lot of their time to us to help make this what it is. And the way that it's grown, it's really because of them. And we have much gratitude to them. So we're extremely grateful for their guidance, their insights, and their work. They roll up their sleeves, and they really engage their community about the work that we're doing and encourage their participation and engagement. So we're extremely grateful to them. Me, as the leader of Linked Equity, I am very grateful for my team. So a huge shout out to Catherine, that so eloquently asked the questions this evening. She does a lot of behind the scenes on this project. Also, we have Joe. Joe does an amazing follow-up and sending out materials and making sure that everyone is aware of what when our webinars are occurring, and follow up to your questions and to our community advisory board. So very grateful to Joe for the work that he does. And then also Jason. Jason does our IT. He's here with us every month, never lets us skip a beat from an IT standpoint. And again, they are all working over the month so that we can bring this webinar to you all once a month. So huge kudos to the team. And then finally, I'd like to give a huge thank you to all of our participants. We're so grateful for your questions, for your engagement, for your participation, and your willingness to learn more about this disease and spread the word and break down the stigma and the barriers around access to care for folks that may be living with this disease, and really focusing on issues that are important to them, but to bringing to our attention your thoughts, your feedback, and just your engagement. So we are extremely grateful to you. We hope that you come back and you continue to participate in our webinars. As I mentioned, we'll be back in September, October. We'll be sending out information to you as we begin to build out this third iteration of this educational series and awareness. And my goal and my dream is that all communities will be able to tap into the resources that's available to them, have a conversation, help one another, as Robert talked about, really, being able to share your journey to help somebody else. And I think that's what it's really all about. If we can break down those barriers. Robert also said, we really don't know the number of folks that have it. Right now, the numbers don't look good when you have 2 times for African Americans, 1.5 for the Latino community. Those numbers are, pretty significant, but I tend to lean towards Robert and think that they're probably much higher because there's so much silence around this, and there really doesn't have to be silence. I know that, and Robert, you probably feel the same way. I know with my dad, I loved spending the time and caring for him, and having a smile that he would put on my face when he was going through his dementia with Lewy bodies. And if I can help someone with that's going through that, I'll sign up every day. So this is a passion project for me. And again, I am so thankful to all of you for being here with us this evening. So I look forward to seeing you all in September and October. And if we didn't answer your question or you have additional questions, please reach out, email us, put it on your survey, and we'll be sure to get back in touch with you. Thank you so much. I apologize that we went over, but again, we try to be respectful of your time. And I just felt that we needed to get those questions out for Robert, as well as hear Pastor Thurman's comments. So have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in September and October. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I see Shamika's on the line as well.
Oh, great. Shamika's part of our advisory board as well, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you so much for everything. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Robert and Kim. We're praying for you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Robert. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Take good care.
Anything I can do for anybody, please reach out. Let me know.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert. I don't know if I said that enough, but thank you for sharing your story and your journey. We appreciate you.
That's what we're called to do, ma'am.
All right. Have a good one.
All right.
Take care.
Thank y'all.
All righty. Bye-bye.